Ethan Parker had spent most of his 36 years in the same small Texas town, a place where everyone knew everyone else's business, but also where neighbors still helped each other without keeping score. His modest repair shop sat on the corner of Main Street, smelling of oil and warm metal, its walls lined with shelves of tools collected over decades. Business wasn't booming, but Ethan had enough to pay the bills and keep the lights on. He lived alone in a small apartment above the shop, preferring the simple life, where his work spoke louder than his words ever could. The afternoon rain tapped steadily against the shop's windows, a soft percussion that made the hum of his space heater sound even cozier. Ethan was elbow-deep in the engine of an old pickup when he heard the hesitant creak of the front door. Looking up, he saw a young woman, her long brown hair damp from the rain, pushing a wheelchair that seemed to rattle with every turn of the wheels. In the seat sat a little girl, bundled in a pink raincoat, her brown eyes curious but guarded, watching Ethan carefully. The woman's voice was gentle but tinged with worry as she introduced herself. "I'm Claire, and this is my daughter Lily." She glanced down at the wheelchair, apologetically before continuing. "It's been giving us trouble for weeks. The left wheel sticks and the brakes don't work properly. I've called around, but the repair cost is more than we can handle right now. Someone in town told me you're good with, well, just about anything. Mechanical." Ethan wiped his hands on a rag, stepping forward to take a closer look. He knelt beside the chair, turning the wheels slowly with his hands, listening for the telltale squeak of worn bearings. The brakes barely caught when pressed, and the left wheel's alignment was so off it was a wonder Lily could move forward at all. "I can fix this," he said simply, glancing up at Claire, who looked relieved, yet uneasy. "But I can't pay," she began, but Ethan shook his head firmly. "Don't worry about that. Kindness doesn't have a price tag here." Lily, who had been quiet until now, tilted her head. "You fix cars, right? Not wheelchairs?" she asked in a soft voice. Ethan chuckled warmly. "A wheel's a wheel, kiddo. Doesn't matter what it's attached to if it rolls. I can make it roll. Better." He winked, and she smiled shyly, her earlier caution melting into trust. Claire bit her lip, watching as Ethan carefully wheeled the chair toward his workbench, already mentally mapping out the repairs. The rain outside seemed to grow heavier, but inside, the shop was warm with the smell of grease and the soft clink of tools. Ethan pulled the left wheel free and examined the axle, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This isn't just wear and tear," he muttered to himself. "It's been used rough for a while." Claire explained that Lily's wheelchair was over 5 years old, and with insurance delays and medical bills piling up, replacing it had never been an option. Ethan only nodded, filing away the information without judgment. He fetched a box from the back room, filled with spare bearings, brake pads, and assorted parts scavenged from old bicycles, scooters, and even abandoned wheelchairs he had fixed for practice. Most mechanics would have told Claire to order expensive factory parts, but Ethan believed in working with what you had. He replaced the worn bearings, realigned the wheel, frame, and even adjusted the seat so Lily would be more comfortable. All the while, the little girl watched him work, occasionally asking curious questions about each tool he picked up. "Why do you keep your tools so shiny?" Lily asked, leaning forward in her chair. Ethan grinned without looking up. "Because tools are like friends you take care of them, and they'll take care of you." Claire smiled faintly at the exchange, her eyes softening. She couldn't remember the last time someone spoke to Lily without pity in their voice. Ethan treated her like any other person in the shop, equal, capable of curiosity and conversation, not defined by the wheelchair she sat in. Hours passed unnoticed. The rain slowed to a drizzle outside, and the glow of the shop's overhead lights made the space feel like its own little world. Ethan tightened the last bolt, gave the wheel a final spin, and stepped back. "All right, Lily, give it a try." She pushed forward, and to her delight, the wheelchair rolled smoothly, no resistance, no squeaks. She giggled and spun in a small circle, testing the brakes with quick stops. Her face lit up like the 4th of July. "It's perfect," she beamed, and Claire's eyes shimmered with grateful tears. Claire reached for her purse, but Ethan held up his hand. "Nope, not a penny. You just promise me you'll bring it back if it ever acts up again." Claire hesitated, then nodded slowly, her voice thick with emotion. "You don't know what this means to us." Ethan shrugged modestly. "It's just what neighbors do." But deep down, he knew it wasn't just anything. This was a little girl's freedom, her independence, and that mattered more than any paycheck he could have received today. They stayed a few minutes longer, chatting lightly about the weather and the town's annual fair coming up next month. Lily told Ethan about her favorite books and how she liked drawing pictures of cars, especially old ones. "Maybe one day I'll draw your shop," she said earnestly, and Ethan felt an unexpected warmth in his chest. When they finally left, Claire pushed Lily down the ramp into the damp, glistening street. Lily waved over her shoulder. "Bye, Mr. Parker, thank you." Ethan waved back, the image of her smile lingering long after the door closed. That night, after locking up the shop, Ethan sat at his workbench, the faint ticking of the wall clock keeping him company. He thought about Claire's tired but grateful eyes, about Lily's laughter when the chair rolled without resistance. He didn't expect to see them again any time soon. People came and went in his line of work. Most moved on. But something about that encounter stayed with him, like the smell of rain-soaked streets that lingered even after the storm had passed. Ethan had no idea that his small act of kindness had set in motion something far bigger than he could imagine. Somewhere, someone was already talking about what he'd done. And in a world where good deeds often went unnoticed, this one was about to travel far beyond the quiet streets of his small Texas town. For now, though, he simply poured himself a cup of coffee, leaned back in his chair, and let the sound of the rain lull him into the kind of peace only a good day's work can bring. Ethan's heart pounded as the limousine door closed behind him, its plush leather seating a stark contrast to the worn stools in his shop. He glanced out the tinted window, watching his small town disappear. The men in suits remained silent, their expressions unreadable. The hum of the road lulled him into a strange calm, though his mind raced with questions. Why would someone send a limousine for him, and that jet engine? Was that real? When they turned toward the private airstrip on the outskirts of town, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The limousine rolled to a smooth stop beside a gleaming private jet, its polished metal reflecting the cloudy Texas sky. Ethan stepped out slowly, feeling out of place in his oil-stained shirt. A flight attendant greeted him warmly, ushering him toward the steps. Inside, the scent of leather and fresh coffee filled the cabin. Then he saw them: Claire, her posture poised in an elegant navy business suit, and Lily, bouncing in her seat with excitement. Claire's smile was knowing, almost shy, as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. "Mr. Parker," Claire began softly, rising to greet him, "I think it's time you knew who I really am." Ethan blinked, unsure what to say. Lily grinned, clearly in on the secret. Claire explained that she was the CEO of one of the largest medical technology companies in the country, specializing in mobility solutions for children with disabilities. "I didn't tell you before," she continued, "because I wanted to see the kind of man you truly were. You passed every test without even knowing there was one." Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unsure how to process her words. "I just fixed a wheelchair," he said quietly, almost apologetically. Claire shook her head. "You gave my daughter her independence back, without asking for a dime. That's more than most would do. I see countless people in my world chase money, but kindness like yours, that's priceless," Lily chimed in. "And you didn't even make fun of me when the wheel squeaked." Ethan chuckled, softly, warmth creeping into his chest. The jet began to taxi and Ethan braced himself as it accelerated down the runway. Through the window, he watched the ground fall away, his small town shrinking to a patchwork of fields and roads. "Where are we going?" he finally asked. Claire smiled mysteriously. "Somewhere I think you'll fit in perfectly." The flight was smooth, and the cabin felt more like a luxury apartment than a plane. Ethan sipped coffee he didn't think he'd like, but found surprisingly good. Hours later, the jet descended over a sprawling coastal city, the skyline gleaming in the afternoon sun. When they landed, another limousine awaited, whisking them through bustling streets before stopping in front of a towering glass building. The name of Claire's company shimmered in bold silver letters across the top. Ethan stared, unsure if he was meant to follow. "Come on," Claire encouraged, leading him inside. The lobby was vast, with marble floors and a wall-sized aquarium. People in suits greeted Claire with respect as they passed. They took an elevator to the top floor, where Claire led Ethan into a bright conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered sweeping views of the ocean. On the long table lay a folder with his name, embossed on it. "Open it," Claire urged. Inside were documents, an official job offer. Claire explained that her company needed someone to lead a new initiative, a free wheelchair repair program for low-income families across the country. "You've proven you care more about people than profit," she said. "That's exactly who I want running this." Ethan's jaw dropped. "Claire, I don't even have a degree." She waved the concern away. "You have something far more valuable: skill, heart, and integrity. We'll give you the training and resources. I believe in you, Ethan." Lily piped up again. "You fixed mine better than the factory did." Ethan looked between them, his throat tightening. The offer felt surreal, almost like a dream he might wake from, but the sincerity in Claire's eyes told him it was real. After a long pause, Ethan finally nodded. "If this helps more kids like Lily, then I'm in." Claire's smile widened, relief and joy mingling in her expression. She stood, offering her hand, but instead, Ethan shook his head and pulled her into a hug. Lily clapped, beaming from ear to ear. Papers were signed, and just like that, Ethan's life took a turn he never could have predicted. From that day, his name would be tied to something far bigger than the small garage he'd called home. Over the next week, Claire introduced Ethan to the team that would help him launch the program. Engineers, designers, and technicians all gathered to hear his ideas. At first, he was intimidated, surrounded by people with years of formal education, but they listened to him with genuine respect. His practical knowledge from years of hands-on repairs proved invaluable. Soon, he was sketching modifications, explaining common breakdowns, and suggesting designs that could be easily fixed in the field. When the first prototype of their new wheelchair model rolled out, Lily insisted on being the one to test it. The chair was lightweight, durable, and could be adjusted as children grew. Watching Lily race across the company's testing floor brought tears to more than a few eyes, including Ethan's. Claire stood beside him, her hand lightly resting on his shoulder. "This is only the beginning," she whispered. He believed her. For the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. Months later, the program had already expanded to multiple states. Families who couldn't afford repairs or replacements were receiving help free of charge. Ethan traveled often, overseeing training sessions for local repair teams. Each trip, he met children whose lives were transformed by something as simple as a functioning wheelchair. Every thank you card, every tearful hug from a parent reminded him of why he'd said yes on that day in the conference room. His work was no longer about fixing machines, it was about restoring freedom. One crisp autumn afternoon, Ethan found himself back in his Texas hometown for a community event sponsored by the program. His old garage still stood, though now it bore a new sign, Parker Mobility Solutions. As he stood outside, a familiar laugh rang out. Turning, he saw Claire and Lily approaching. Lily, taller now and walking beside her mother, gave him a quick hug before running off to join other kids. Claire smiled, her eyes shining. "You've done more than I ever imagined," she said softly. Ethan glanced around at the crowd. Families, volunteers, kids zipping by in wheelchairs that were once broken but now fully functional. "I just did what anyone should do," he replied, though, deep down, he knew not everyone would. Claire shook her head. "No, Ethan. You did what only a few would, and you did it without expecting anything in return. That's what makes you different." He didn't respond, but his heart swelled with quiet pride. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness truly could change the world. Ethan sat in the leather seat, the hum of the engines vibrating softly through the cabin, still trying to process what Claire had just said. 6 figures, a team, a state-of-the-art workshop. It all felt surreal, as if he'd stepped into someone else's life by accident. He glanced out the oval window at the endless stretch of clouds, wondering how his life had changed so drastically in just a few days. A week ago, he'd been under a rusted pickup truck, oil dripping onto his shirt, worrying about next month's rent. Now, he was on a private jet, heading into the unknown. Claire leaned forward, her expression warm yet determined. "I meant every word." "Ethan," she said, resting her hand gently on the armrest, "when you fixed Lily's chair, you didn't just repair a piece of equipment, you restored her independence. That's something money can't buy, and that's why I trust you to help me bring this vision to life." Lily, seated beside her mother, giggled as she played with the in-flight tablet, her swinging legs happily. Ethan smiled, but his mind raced with doubts. Could he really step into this new role? He thought about his life in that small Texas town, the creaking floors of his modest apartment above the shop, the smell of coffee brewing in the corner cafe, the customers who came not just for repairs but for his honesty. He had always been comfortable in his simple world, but deep down he'd felt the weight of dreams he never dared to chase. Now those dreams seemed within reach, yet terrifyingly unfamiliar. "I'm just a small-town mechanic, Claire," he said quietly. "This is a lot." Claire's eyes softened, but her voice remained steady. "Do you think I was born a CEO? No. I started as a hospital receptionist, watching families struggle because they couldn't afford the right equipment for their kids. I worked my way up, learning everything I could, and when I had the chance to start my own company, I promised myself I'd find people who cared as much as I did." She gave him a knowing smile. "People like you." Lily turned her gaze toward Ethan, her brown eyes full of innocent sincerity. "Mr. Parker, if you make more chairs like mine, other kids can go to the park again. They can race their friends and play tag. You can help them smile like me." Her words hit harder than any corporate pitch could. Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. He nodded slowly, realizing this wasn't just about a job, it was about changing lives. The jet's attendant approached, offering drinks. Ethan declined, his mind too busy spinning. He asked Claire about the workshop, and she described it in vivid detail, rows of advanced tools he'd only seen in magazines, 3D printers for custom parts, a testing space where designs could be refined in real time. She explained the company's mission: to create durable, lightweight wheelchairs that could be sold at a fraction of the current market cost. "We'll start in the US," she said, "but my goal is to reach children around the world." Ethan imagined working in a place where every bolt he tightened, every gear he aligned, would make a child's life easier. The thought ignited something deep within him. For years, he'd taken pride in keeping old trucks and motorcycles running, but this was purpose on a whole new level. He could build something that mattered long after he was gone. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "Son, a good life isn't about how much you make, it's about how much you give." Maybe this was his chance to truly give. The plane ride stretched on, but instead of boredom, Ethan felt an eager anticipation building. Claire handed him a thick folder. From her leather bag, filled with sketches, budgets, and timelines, he pored over them, his mechanic's mind instantly identifying areas for improvement. "This axle design is too heavy," he pointed out. "If we swap to a reinforced aluminum alloy, it'll weight without losing strength." Claire's smile widened. "That's exactly why I need you, Ethan." Her trust felt like a key turning in a lock inside him. When the jet finally descended toward a sprawling city skyline, Ethan saw the company's headquarters, a gleaming glass building surrounded by greenery and wide parking areas. It was a far cry from his dusty garage in Texas. As they taxied to a stop, a line of employees in matching polos waited near the hangar, clapping as the steps lowered. "They're here for you," Claire whispered. The idea made Ethan's cheeks flush. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, especially not for something he felt was simply the right thing to do. Stepping onto the tarmac, Ethan was greeted with handshakes and warm welcomes. A tall man introduced himself as the head of engineering and immediately began discussing current prototypes. Another team member spoke excitedly about integrating adjustable seating for growing children. Ethan listened, absorbing everything, but his eyes kept drifting back to Lily, who zipped around in her now perfect wheelchair, laughing freely. That sound was better than any applause. It reminded him why he had said yes before even knowing the details. Inside the building, Claire gave him a tour. The workshop was everything she'd promised: polished floors, neatly organized tool stations, and technology that made his heart race. He ran his hands over the smooth surface of a workbench, imagining the countless projects that could come to life here. "This could be home," he murmured. Claire caught the words and nodded. "It can be, if you want it." He thought of his quiet town again, but the pull toward this new chapter felt too strong to ignore. That afternoon, Ethan signed the papers. The salary number on the contract still made him uneasy. It was more money than he'd ever seen, but he understood it wasn't just payment for his time. It was an investment in trust, vision, and the difference they would make together. Claire promised him full creative freedom, encouraging him to dream big. For the first time in years, Ethan's mind flooded with ideas: wheelchairs with terrain-friendly tires, adjustable frames, even models with smart sensors for safety. The possibilities were endless. In the weeks that followed, Ethan settled into his new role. He traded greasy overalls for clean work shirts, but he never lost the calluses on his hands. Every day, he worked alongside engineers, designers, and physical therapists, blending his mechanical skills with their expertise. He visited children's hospitals, speaking with young patients and their families to understand their needs. Each conversation fueled his determination. The project wasn't just progressing, it was evolving into something bigger than any of them had first imagined. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Ethan stood in the workshop alone, tinkering with a prototype. Lily had visited earlier that day, helping him test the latest design. Seeing her race across the parking lot without a single hitch in the wheels had been the highlight of his week. He thought about the moment she first rolled smoothly out of his garage back in Texas, her smile bright enough to light up the dreariest day. That memory had started this journey, and it would always anchor him. Months later, the first official production model rolled off the assembly line. Ethan held it in his hands, feeling the weight, or rather, the lack of it, and the sturdiness in its frame. It was beautiful in its simplicity, built to last, yet affordable enough to reach families who'd been left behind by the industry. At the launch event, Claire took the stage and introduced Ethan to a crowd of reporters, philanthropists, and medical professionals. "He didn't just fix a wheelchair," she said proudly. "He fixed the way we think about accessibility." As applause filled the room, Ethan felt a quiet pride swell in his chest. He wasn't comfortable with the spotlight, but he was proud of the work. Children rolled onto the stage in the new wheelchairs, each one grinning from ear to ear. Lily was among them, her little hands waving at the crowd. She wheeled over to Ethan and whispered, "Told you we could help other kids." That single sentence was worth more to him than any paycheck or award. It was proof that they'd made a real difference. That night, after the event, Ethan stepped outside into the cool air. The city lights sparkled like 1,000 tiny promises in the distance. He realized that life had a way of surprising you when you least expected it. Fixing Lily's chair had been a small act in his eyes, something any decent person would do, yet it had set off a chain of events that transformed not only his future but the futures of countless children. He had gone from a small-town mechanic to someone whose work reached far beyond his own hands. As he walked toward his truck, a restored classic he couldn't bear to part with, Ethan thought about the journey ahead. There would be challenges, setbacks, and long nights in the workshop, but he was ready. Because now, every turn of a wrench, every adjustment of a bolt was part of a mission that mattered. And it all began with one rainy afternoon, a broken wheelchair, and a little girl's smile.